Yo, what's going on YouTube? Polotrieshard here, and today I'm going to be talking about the top 10 units on the meta list right now in 26.0. While making my decisions on what units place where, I took in a few things into consideration. One of the first things that I looked at, obviously, was the top 100 players, and I tallied up what card was being used the most throughout the top 100. I also considered which one of these units has the most compatibility with S tier supports. By that, I mean some of these cards are predominantly only buffed by one S tier support. For example, a Genie or a Cultist, they would pretty much get stuck with only being buffed by Swords, which is an S tier buff or an S tier support. And then all its other supports will be like A tier, Summoner, Harley Quinn, whatnot. Um, Actually, I would say Harley Quinn is S tier. I take that back. But when making this list, I had to consider that. The S tier units that I'm gonna start out with here is at number one of the meta is Sea Dog. Sea Dog is definitely the most annoying card in the game. I don't know one person that likes Sea Dog except for the people that play it. Sea Dog, Frost, Witch, so annoying. I know so many players that literally hate that combination so bad. Not only that, when looking at this top 100 list, without a doubt, Sea Dog is most played out of the top 100 players. Sea Dog definitely is very, very strong just because it's not necessarily the strongest card, but just the fact of how annoying it is, and I'm sure a lot of players just leave entirely as soon as they see Sea Dog. Right now, you can see the top three players in Rush Royale are literally Sea Dog players. So, yeah, for that reason, I'm giving it to Sea Dog as number one in the game as much as I don't want to. I don't like Sea Dog. Moving on now, I'm gonna say Bard is number two on the meta. The reason why I'm giving it to Bard is because Bard is just overall a very fun card to play. I like the inspiration aspect of Bard. A lot of players also enjoy it. Um, but the one thing that sets Bard up is not only its base damage being very high, but the fact that Bard has a lot of compatibility with multiple supports in one deck. For example, you could play Bard with Trapper, Witch, and Swords at the same time. So that's obviously going to give it advantage over, for example, let's say you're playing Cultist. Cultist is never going to be able to get ran with Witch and Swords at the same time. So obviously, Bard is going to do more damage just off the calculations that you would get from being able to run multiple supports at a time. For that, I'm gonna have to give Bard definitely number two on the S tier list. I see a lot of Bard players, but moving on to number three here, I see Spirit Master a lot. Actually, if I had to compare the Bard to Spirit Master ratio in the top 100, I would have to say that there is definitely more Spirit Master players. I don't know if this is because maybe people didn't invest in Bard, but Spirit Master is still one of the top three cards in the game without a doubt. Spirit Master, from what I've heard from players who play it, has a very consistent cleanse on it, which definitely helps with playing against Sea Dog and all these toxic metas that are going on in the game right now. And not only that, Spirit Master is very good at base damage, but it is also just like Bard, where it essentially can be ran with multiple S tier supports at once. For this reason alone, I'm gonna have to give number three to Spirit Master. I see a lot of them myself while playing. I currently have 8,000 plus trophies in the game, so I usually go against a lot of Spirit Master players. Um, but moving on to number four now, I'm gonna speak about Riding Hood. Riding Hood, I had to put at number four. I feel like Riding Hood is a very, very, very strong card, but um, Riding Hood with Zeus is definitely number four on the list. Um, I say this because if you don't have Zeus with Riding Hood, and might I say Zeus level 15, Riding Hood would probably be like number 7 or 8. But as soon as it steps into that realm of having Zeus, I believe Riding Hood benefits from Zeus more than any other card in the game. For that reason, Riding Hood is definitely up there at number 4. I kind of wanted to put this one above Sea Dog, but above Spirit Master, but I didn't do it just because of that simple aspect that Riding Hood without Zeus is probably lower down in the tier list than what I put it at with Zeus. But overall, Riding Hood is an amazing, amazing card and very fun to play. Maybe one day I'll have it and I get to play it. Moving on to number 5 here, I'm gonna have to give it to Genie. Genie's pretty much a very consistent card. It is very unique in its own ways. I love the fact that it's like a merge deck and whatnot. Genie has a couple distinct characteristics which I like about it. Genie is very powerful at its base, but the big thing when it comes to Genie is it is essentially immune to Sea Dog Witch. Not the frost aspect of a Sea Dog deck, but the Sea Dog and Witch can't really affect Genie because the Vortex is consistently doing damage even if the unit is stunned. And then Witch also doesn't really affect Genie too much because usually a Genie deck is full of units and basically it has a decent cleanse on it. So for that reason, I hear a lot of the top players in the game tell me from their experience, Genie is the quote unquote toxic killer. So for that reason, I'm gonna have to put Genie at number 5. But moving on to number 6 here, I'm gonna give it to Monk. Monk last season before update 26 would definitely have to be top 5. But I feel like after the new mechanics that were added into the game, where they basically shortened the length of the rounds starting after you kill a boss from 5 seconds to 1 second, that made a huge difference to Monk. Now I see a lot of Monk players struggling just to get their mana power up ability on time, and oftentimes just getting screwed over because they didn't have enough recharge time. So for that reason, I'm gonna have to put Monk definitely at number 6. Just because after 26.0 it kind of got wrecked. But it's still very powerful. I play Genie. Usually I beat the Monk players, no problem, unless they're just like outnumbering me by crit or something. But for the most part, Monk players really don't affect me as a Genie too hard. I feel like I beat them consistently enough to put Genie above Monk. Now moving on to number 7, I'm gonna have to give it to Bruiser. Bruiser's always been a very, very good card. However, from what I'm hearing from a lot of top players, the Bruiser mechanic where he goes to sleep is very inconsistent and can lead to you losing games. However, just damage-wise and, the unique talents that come along with Bruiser, I would love to put it at top 3, maybe top 5. But just because of that mechanic where it goes to sleep randomly and you can sometimes get screwed over because of it, I'm going to have to definitely put Bruiser at number 7. One thing to note about Bruiser is it's another one of those cards that you can run multiple S tier supports with. A lot of the time when I see a Bruiser player, they're playing Witch, Swords, and Trapper in the same deck, which is like the 3 Musketeers of freaking any deck being buffed. So with that being said, I'm definitely going to have to put Bruiser where it is on the list. Moving on now, I'm probably going to give number 8 to Cultist. The reason for me saying this is because Cultist is just overall a very consistent card. It does great damage. However, Cultist has a big flaw, and that is when you're playing Cultist and your opponent is spamming swords, the cleanse mechanism on Cultist is very inconsistent and very, very hard to consistently use. For that reason, a lot of Cultist players will be winning a match and clearly out damaging their opponent, and then a boss such as Virus will come along and they'll end up losing just because they can't cleanse it, especially if their opponent is using swords. For that reason, I'm gonna have to put Bruiser at number 9, just because of the fact that the cleanse is pretty mid, and not only that, the only real S tier support you ever see ran with Cultist is usually just swords. So that's gonna put it at a disadvantage, obviously. But still, top 10 card, I would definitely have to see it. Now moving on, as of right now, from what I'm seeing, Tesla was just buffed recently. Everything about Tesla was buffed. The damage, the buffs, everything. Tesla is one of those cards that is just, it's got a big skill gap to it. Definitely is, if you master Tesla, I could even say it would be a top 3 card, especially after the buff, just because Tesla is also one of those decks that can be used with multiple S tier supports. But do I see a lot of Teslas at 8K trophies? Not so much. I think that's just because the whole, how Teslas ran and basically how it builds damage is just a little bit difficult to grow as a match progresses. And I feel like it takes too long to get it going compared to some other cards. So for that, I'm gonna have to put Tesla at number 10. Maybe that'll change as this update continues to go on. From them buffing it. But for right now, I'm putting Tesla at number 10. And me personally, I find Tesla to be very fun. Definitely would love to see more Tesla players out there. I don't know how what side is better, the chain side or the professor side. But personally, I like Tesla. Hashtag free Tesla. But yeah, Tesla's number 10, 100%. And from there, I pretty much am going to wrap this up. If you guys enjoyed the video and you guys want to see a tier list for support cards in the game, drop that like button and leave a comment down below if you guys enjoyed this video. Other than that, keep it beefy, people.